Welcome back, friends. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. I'm Dr. Letha Melman, and today we're going to be studying Genesis chapter 42 through 50. So we're going to finish the book today. This is a great opportunity for us to study looking for the types and shadows of Jesus Christ. These chapters are filled with them. Additionally, this is an opportunity for us to liken the scriptures unto ourselves. If you've ever had to forgive anybody, if you've ever gone through hard things and wondered how you stay close to the Lord, this is your section. All right, Heavenly Father is abundant in Joseph's life, and he overcomes really hard things and stays close to the Lord. So let's dive in. Chapter 42 begins with the famine. Jacob says to his boys, essentially, get up and go do something so that we can live. You need to go to Egypt. You've got to get corn. I've heard that it's there. And he tells them that they cannot take Benjamin. Peradventure, something happened to him. In other words, the last time I sent you out with my baby boy, things didn't go well. I need him here. So the other 10 sons of Israel go to Egypt to buy that corn. This is the dream that Joseph had, that the brothers would come to him seeking help, that he would be the ruler over them, and it's already coming to pass. We are reminded in verse 6 that Joseph is the governor of all the land, and the boys bow down to him. And immediately in verse 7, Joseph knows his brothers, but they do not know him. And this is a type and shadow of Jesus Christ right here, right in the beginning, right? That Jesus always knows and recognizes us, but we do not always recognize him in our lives. Now, when Joseph first meets his family in verse 7, it says that he does not tell them who he is. And he asks them a little roughly, where do you come from? He's disguising his voice. He's trying to make sure that he has the opportunity to know why they're there, understand why they're there. And also, we're going to find out that he is going to test their hearts. If you're looking for some of the things of Joseph that allowed him to overcome the heartache and the hurt, this could be one of them. He immediately sets boundaries. While he knows them and he loves them, he is setting this boundary of, I need to know where your heart is before I know how much I can open mine. He wants to already, but he knows that he needs to understand what they're here for and what is going on before he tells them who he is. In verse 9, he remembers the dreams that he had, and he realizes that this is coming to fruition. And he says to them, I believe that you're spies, come into my land to see the nakedness of our land. And this is already a symbol that we have. Nakedness is that weakness, that vulnerability. And he's suggesting to them that they're seeking that. Now, he could be talking about the land. He may also be talking about them, him, or their relationship together. Like, where are they? In fact, remember when they left him, they had stripped him of his garment and of that coat. So if he is naked in that sense, not fully naked, but naked to that vulnerability, he is wondering, where are you at? Is this what you've come to do, is to see where I'm at? And they say, oh, not so. We are your servants. We have come here to buy some food because we've heard that you're so wonderful and we know that you're prepared. And they tell him that they are true men in verse 11. And this may have made Joseph wonder, are you really true men? Are you now who you say you are? Have you changed? What caused the change? We don't get to know a whole lot of his heart and his feelings here, but we know that he has big feelings. That comes up a lot in these couple of chapters. Again, Joseph says, no, you're here to see the nakedness of our land. And when we talk about nakedness, one of the thoughts we might wonder is, although we're prepared, right? Joseph is very prepared for this situation, maybe not perfectly to meet his brothers, knew it might happen someday, but that's hard to prepare for. And yet he still has weaknesses and imperfections. And are we able to say that in our life? Or do we need to come off as always being perfect and always being right before the Lord, before other people? And that nakedness may be a moment for them to share their guilt, to share the heartache that they have been harboring all these years. And we'll see them actually do it later, but here they don't. They don't know who he is. They tell him who they are. We are 12 brothers. We've lost one. We have one father. We're just all brothers. And he says unto them in 15, well, then hereby shall you be proved. And again, this idea of prove to me that your hearts have changed. I want to believe it. I want us to be reunited, but I don't know yet if I can trust that. And so he comes up with a plan and says, you can't go to the Pharaoh unless you bring your little brother, because he wants to see him. He wants to see his whole family again, right? His plan includes Pharaoh, but really it's God. He says to them, if you can bring your little brother, I'll know that you're speaking the truth. If you don't, then I'll know that you are spies. And he says by Pharaoh, but really what he is worried about here is God and God's plan and reconnecting this family that he knows is a covenant family. They need to be together. They need to be living this covenant path. And he wants to see where they are. So he gives them that option. He also is telling them in verse 18 that he is merciful. Are they? Are they going to abandon this brother who he's going to put in jail and keep kind of as collateral for them to come back? Or will they come back with their younger brother and sacrifice the things that need to happen? And this is an opportunity for us to look in our life. Are we living a covenant life? Because living a covenant life changes us. And God works through our human agency, right? Even the imperfect choices that we make, it may seem like we're breaking covenants, but he chooses to keep those covenant promises. Even when we are learning and growing and we see them later, they go off and they don't come back right away. And the Lord does that with us as well. He stands in the place of Joseph saying, who are you? Where is your heart? Are you going to stay with me? Are you going to walk this path? Are you going to walk away from me and come back? The Lord is patient with us. And we see Joseph stepping into this role here of, I have an opportunity for you to prove who you are. And it's going to be rough and it's going to be uncomfortable. And I trust that you will do it. I trust that you will come back. I want to trust that. I want to know that your hearts are as good as I believe them to be. And then he ends that verse with, do this and live, for I fear God. Again, reminding them, this isn't about Pharaoh. This really isn't about what's happening here. This is about God. This is about our relationship with him. Where are you guys on your covenant path? I need to know before I can go any further. In verse 21, we start to see some of this guilt come out. They say one to another, we are very guilty concerning our brother in that we saw the anguish of his soul and he besought us and we would not hear. Therefore is his distress come unto us. In verse 22, Reuben answered them saying, spake I not unto you saying, do not sin against this child, and ye would not hear. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. They're having this whole conversation. And this is the first time that Joseph has heard them have some shame, some guilt, some sorrow over what they did to him. Already, he is ready to forgive them. And he is seeing this desire in their hearts to change. And Joseph, in verse 24, those big emotions, he turned and he wept. He couldn't be with them. It broke his heart to see their anguish and healed his heart to see that they had changed, that they were no longer those spiteful brothers, those prideful brothers, those brothers who left him. Joseph continues with his plan. He bounds his brother Simeon right in front of them so they can see this is what is going to happen. And then he gives them back their money. It says that he commanded that their sacks be filled with corn. He restored all of their money and in fact added extra provisions for them to get home. Now, if you are looking for ways to overcome hardness, these are some of the ways. And we're going to see this all throughout, so you might want to make a list, and I hope that you'll add to the list that we create here together today. 1, love them anyway. And 2, have a desire to forgive them. Follow God's will more than their will or your will in this situation when you are hurting and when it is hard. And have those big emotions. It's okay to cry. We're going to see Joseph cry many times throughout this chapter, throughout this whole section. And then bless them. Every opportunity that you have to bless somebody, take that opportunity. God will never be upset with you for doing something good. And this is what he does here. Now, he's also going to test them, right? Okay, I see that your hearts are changed a little. Are you still really after money, or have you learned to love people more? And so that's why he keeps that brother. Also, it means that they need to come back, right? He's hoping that little temptation for them to take care of their brother will be enough to get them back. Because this whole thing started with Simeon, we can think about why he might have chose to keep Simeon. Is he hoping that if they don't have Simeon, will they make a different choice? Maybe he also wants to see what happens to Simeon if he stays behind, or it's an opportunity for Simeon to experience some of the things that Joseph experienced. Now, we don't know, so it's something that we can think about and wonder. They find the money, and it says that they are afraid. Verse 28, and he said unto his brethren, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. Their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, what is it that God hath done unto us? They're afraid that they're going to be in trouble with the law, right? Oh my goodness, we have this money. They're going to think that we stole it. Really, Joseph is challenging them. What are you going to do when a hard thing comes into your life? When it looks like you've done something wrong and you haven't, how do you react? Like, where is your relationship? Where is your discipleship? Do you even want one with the Lord and with me? And that's what he's testing here. But also, do we sometimes see our blessings as curses? Do we sometimes not get the blessing that we want and therefore judge God and think, oh, he must be angry with me. He must have abandoned me. Why would he let this happen to me? Like, I was there doing good. We tried to buy this and now we are in trouble, right? We're not going to make it back to him. And if we do, we have to figure out what to do with this money. They're going to think we stole it. Would it be easier to just walk away from that blessing? Sometimes our blessings have heavy parts to them. And it's a challenge for us to decide, are we going to turn our hearts to God? Or are we going to walk away from him? And we see that challenge here that these young men are facing. We do know so far already that the Lord has increased Joseph's faith so that he can forgive. These were some pretty hard things that he had to go through with his brothers. And it's very clear that he has already forgiven them in his heart, even before they walk onto the scene. President Nelson gave a talk in 2022 called The Everlasting Covenant. And in there, he essentially says that Joseph has a covenant relationship viewpoint. As a teen, he must have somehow understood this covenant love that Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ had for him and was able to share that with others. And he understood that his covenant, his birthright, role in his dreams, and he took that on with unfailing covenant love of Jesus Christ toward himself, toward others, and toward God. And although God doesn't really need to be forgiven, he is in the details. Sometimes we feel like we need to forgive him because we become upset with him when things are hard and we feel like, I'm doing everything right. Joseph was trying to live the law. He was trying to fulfill the things that God had told him to do. And he was cast into prison and he was put in a pit and he was forgotten multiple times. And yet, through all of that, he forgave and he lived this covenant of love. And we need to do that in our life. You know, if we're upset with God, it's really us who needs to be forgiven. But maybe a part of our heart needs to forgive God in that we feel that he is not in our life. We feel that this is too hard for us. When we see that truly he is in the details and the details of the details of our life, we can have this covenant understanding. And that idea all comes from President Nelson's talk. I encourage you to read it and look for some more similarities and comparisons there. We talked last week about the women in the scriptures who seemed guilty but were innocent, and we see that happening here. These young men are innocent. They didn't do anything wrong, and yet they appear very, very guilty, and they are afraid. It tells us multiple times here that they are afraid. And here's this family story happening again of them living through a life that they didn't do anything wrong, but everybody's going to say that they're guilty. And how do they do it? Well, these men, they stay away a little bit longer. They go home. They go home to their father and tell him, listen, we've got to take Benjamin back with us. We've got to show that we are not spies. We've got to show that we are good people and that we are true and honest. And of course, their father says, no, you're not taking him back. And there's a sweet moment in here when Reuben stands up and says, I will take this on. He says, chapter 42, verse 37, Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my two sons, if I bring him, Benjamin, not to thee, deliver him unto my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. While this is this beautiful offer of, you can trust me, I will lay down the life of my two sons for your one, he says, no, I can't do it. If my son leaves me, I will die. I cannot do that. In chapter 43, they eventually run out of food and they come to the point that if they don't do something, if they don't go back, they're going to starve to death. And One of the symbols here, remember, is this idea of bread and the storehouse of bread. And they have to go back because they can't access the bread of life. In heaven, we couldn't go down to earth without Jesus Christ. We would not have this life that we have now if it weren't for Jesus Christ offering himself up as that bread of life first. And that's this moment that they're at, this pivotal kind of heart-crunching moment of, okay, where is my faith? Who can I rely on? And the answer is they've got to go back to the bread store, right? To the bread of life, which is Egypt and also the Lord Jesus Christ. We have another type and shadow of Jesus Christ coming up in Judah. We see a change in Judah. He is the one that was fine leaving his family. He is the one that said, it's okay if we get away with things. And we see a change in him. He comes in to Israel in 8 and says, you can send him with me. And in verse 9, he says, I will be a surety for him. I will take his place. I will make sure that he comes back. And if not, you can blame me forever. Things are so dire that Israel says, okay, and to make things better, why don't you take some honey? Why don't you take some spices, double the money that you had, and make sure that you are very clear that this was a mistake and that you have come to fix this. And they're going to add this. They're going to bring gifts. They bring the fruit, which is, think about spiritually as the fruit of change. They bring balm, which is healing. They bring that extra money to pay extra, to add to the blessings that they already have. They bring honey for sweetness. They bring spice for flavor, and then myrrh. And of course, we know that myrrh was brought to the baby Jesus. And so they are already setting forth these wonderful gifts. And they're like, this is what we have to offer you. This is the best that we have. We are true to our intentions, and we want to prove that to you. So they take their brother, and he leaves them with a prayer. May the God Almighty bless you and keep you and bring you back, because I just cannot live without you. And so they took this money and they came to Joseph's house. In 23, Joseph tells them, it's okay. He says, peace be to you, fear not, for your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. And I had your money, and he brought you Simeon out unto them. Again, immediately he is willing to say, y'all, it's not as bad as you think. Do you remember God? Do you remember the blessings he's blessed you with? Do you not see him in this at all, like I do? Joseph has prepared food for them, and so they get to eat together. And then he asks of their welfare in verse 27. He says, is your father well? The old man of whom you speak, is he yet alive? He's digging deeper. Can his heart handle it if his dad is not there? He cares about them. He cares about the people. He doesn't care about the things. None of that means anything to him. He can get more things. He can get more money, but he can't get them. He can't replace them. They have to be willing participants in this relationship. And they tell him, yes, our father's in good health, but we got to bring our little brother back. You know, he's going to die if we don't. He's just so heartbroken. And Joseph, in verse 30, made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep. And he entered into his chamber and wept there. Those big emotions, overcome with love that his brother is alive and well, his father is alive and well, that he has not missed a chance to reconnect and rekindle these relationships. And he washes his face and he goes back out to them, hoping that they don't notice that he was crying, and they eat this bread. Joseph here wants to teach with divinity, and he has restraint. He doesn't come out here yet and say, do you know who I am? Do you know what this means, that we can be together? Instead, he is reigning in mercy and justice, and he is trying to teach them through their own experiences here of how mercy works, of how justice and mercy can coexist in a place where it seems like they can't. That even in really hard situations, mercy can compensate for justice. In verse 32, there's an interesting comment about the Hebrews. And at this time, remember, the Egyptians are more than Hebrews, and yet they are being led by a Hebrew. This racism that is existing in the world today is not unaware of this situation. However, they are willing to accept it and embrace this particular Hebrew because of all that they do. And in this time period, a Hebrew would not have eaten with Egyptians. And yet here is Joseph reminding them, Our position does not matter to the Lord. Your position and my position, they don't matter, except that we are brothers and except that we can love one another and heal this. And this meal that they're sharing is an opportunity for them to have that experience, and yet another opportunity for them, when they realize what's happening, to understand that mercy and justice can coexist. Before this chapter ends, we see Joseph give them one more test. Essentially, he is going to abundantly bless the youngest to see where their hearts really are. Like, how are they going to react to him giving more to the youngest brother? Something that they don't have, the brother who is most loved by his father. Like, what will they do to him? And then he gets ready to send them on their way. And in 44, he fills their sacks again with food and provisions. He puts the money back in there. It says that it's filled to the brim, right? And he even puts in his silver cup. The silver cup is a reminder of the silver pieces that will betray Jesus later by Judas. The silver cup would have also been a symbol of his position, of Joseph's position. And in our day and age, we have this idea of, is the cup half empty or half full? And the boys are having situations here that they have to determine, are we living in a world that is half empty or a world that is half full? Joseph clearly chooses to see the cup half full. And when these boys are faced with these trials, Joseph wants to know, where does your mind go? Are you a half full kind of a person? Are you a half empty kind of a person? He is trying to expose their heart to see if they have really changed, to see where their loyalty lies, possibly their brother's past imperfections, right? Is Judah still willing to leave if it gets too hard? Does he care about his siblings? Does he care about the people around him now? So he's choosing all of these things through this test. And he's also telling them, I don't want your money. I don't want that. I want a relationship with you. Are you ready to have a relationship with me? Or do we need to keep this game up a little bit longer? He's also offering them a relationship without tallies and debts, right? If it's a tally relationship, then the brothers owe him quite a bit. They owe him for his life. They owe him for the corn, on all the generosity that he's given him. But he's trying to explain to them that relationships are not about what you can do for me and I can do for you. They are a mutual gift to each other and how we can bless each other's lives. That the cup also would have been what's called a divining cup, which again, it's that mantle of authority that he had. In the Egyptian equivalent, it would have been like the coat of many colors that Joseph had when the brothers pulled it off of him. But it's just one more symbol of the power that he had then and has now. Joseph sends his stewards after them and says, go search their bags and bring back to me the cup and the person responsible for it. And so they go out and follow him up and they say, hey, why have you dealt so hardly with my Lord? We know that you stole from us. And they're like, no, we haven't. In fact, they're overconfident in this, saying in verse 9, they say, and whomso of thy servants it be found, let him die, and we also will be thy Lord's bondmen. And so the man says, okay, well, then that's what we can do. Whoever has it, that's the person that will blame. I will be kind and generous to you. We won't even take it all. They're willing to sell themselves into bondage because they are so confident of this, which is interesting because that is the very thing that they did to Joseph. They sold him into bondage. I don't know that they would have found this quite the blessing that Joseph did. Of course, they go through all the bags, and the one that they find it in is Benjamin's, the one that has to go back. And immediately they rent their clothes and returned to the city. Again, it's that symbol of renting that one, I am crushed to pieces, and two, I would trade places with him if I could. They come back to Joseph, and Joseph says, did you not think that I would know that this happened? And they, of course, say, what can we say? We don't know how it got there. And then they offer. In verse 16, Judah even mentions God. He says, God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are the Lord's servants, both we and he also who the cup hath found. In other words, he doesn't understand this, but he is essentially saying God knows. And God has fulfilled his promise to Joseph and to the boys that Joseph would be over them. Judah, this man who could not care about anybody else, has such a transition of heart. He has transformed. In verse 18, he says, take me, let me be thy servant instead. And he shows that he is willing to take that place. In fact, then verse 19 and 20, he reminds Joseph of, we have a dad and he will die without this brother. Please. He's pleading for him, and he's playing on that passion and possibly that emotion that they may have noticed in this man of importance, right? We see a type and shadow here of Jesus Christ. Come over into verse 30. Now, therefore, when I come to thy servant, my father, and the lad is not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life. 31, it shall come to pass that when he seeth the lad is not with us, that he will die, and thy servant shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant of the father with the sorrow to the grave. He recounts what he told his father, that he will be the one to blame, that he would take his place. And he says in 33, now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the land, a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad not be with me, lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father. Jesus said this for us. Take me instead. I have to bring my siblings home. I cannot make them so sad. I cannot make God so sad. Take me. I will make the heel. I will pay their price. I will be your servant. He says that to the Lord on behalf of each of one of us. And this is, again, Jesus Christ. We see this in our lives. And if we don't, we should look for it in our lives. When has he offered to take your pain? When has he offered to take your place? In the atonement, we know that through that, he has offered to take all of our trials and all of our pain and all of our suffering upon himself so that he could share that experience with us. And what is our reaction to that, right? Where is our heart in this? Are we willing to take the place of someone else? Are we willing to let God take our place, God, Jesus Christ? Are we willing to let Jesus Christ have that pain because he offered it to us? Chapter 45 is right away, Joseph can no longer restrain himself. His heart is so pure, and he stands before them and he cries right in front of them. And in verse 2 it says, and he wept aloud. And then he invites them, don't be troubled anymore. Come near me, I pray you, in verse 4. I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now, they did not forget what they did. Neither has Joseph. He knows what happened. And this is his reminder. Listen, all that is behind us. I don't live there anymore. I live here, and I want you to join me living in the moment we have now and the future that we can have. That's part of how he is able to forgive, is he doesn't live in that past. He doesn't dwell there anymore. He has let that go so that he can live in the present, and he's inviting them to join us. In verse 5, he says, now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall neither be an earning nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Again, that foreshadowing of there's a greater deliverance to come, and that deliverance is Jesus Christ. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. He's telling them it wasn't you. Like, you were the vehicle that got me here, but it was God who sent me here, because he turns beauty from ashes, right? He doesn't look for who started the fire. He doesn't blame. He just loves us all the way along, even in our imperfectness. Joseph, in his heart, says, you know, it's okay. Behind all the bad things that happen is God. And he loves me, and he is constantly planning for me. And he was already planning and preparing. And you can know this too. Come with me, be near me, feel of his love for you. Let me teach you what I have learned. And then he's super excited. Go tell dad, bring him, share in this with him. And then I want you to live near me, he says in verse 10, and there I will nourish you. I'm going to take care of you just like I promised, because that is my birthright. That is my responsibility and my joy to take care of you. We see another type and shadow of Jesus Christ, where he is willing to bless those that hurt him and that have wronged him. He says that, go and tell my father of all the glory in Egypt, everything that you've seen, and bring him back. And he fell on his brothers Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. 15, moreover, he kissed all the brethren and wept on them. And after that, his brethren talked with him. He just loves them, and he blesses them over and over and over. He has lived this covenant path we see it in verse 22 as well, that he was stripped, He was falsely accused. He was imprisoned. He was reclothed. And then in verse 22, we're going to see that elevation and clothing of other people. And he's inviting his brothers to live this as well, because they have been stripped of their birthright. They have been imprisoned by their choices and the life that they have lived. We learn in 16 that Joseph, he never spoke badly of his brothers. The Pharaoh finds out that his brothers are coming and he's pleased. That means that he doesn't know all the things that his brothers have done to him. Joseph tells them, go home, get dad, bring your father and come, and also regard not your stuff. He's like, listen, y'all, you don't need stuff. We have stuff. The Lord will provide stuff. And then he gives them more stuff, more goodness than they could possibly carry. In 21, he gave them provisions for their way. And then in 22, he starts loving on them and just giving them gifts to give them gifts. And he gives an extra portion to his brother Benjamin, 100 pieces of silver and fine changes of raiment. And there's that elevated status, that giving of new clothes, that clothing of others that we are seeing through him. And then he warns them, see that ye fall not out by the way. And this is a warning that we all need. You have these treasures. Now again, where is your heart? Are you going to take these and forget about me? Are you going to take these and glorify me and share and bless to others? And that is what he sends them up. He sends them on their way, and they tell their dad, hey, Joseph is alive and he wants you to come see him. He's great. He's healthy. Everything has been restored. His identity has been restored. His power and his authorities have all been restored. He is just ready for us, Dad. You should come with us. And it says that at first he doesn't believe them. His heart falters and he says, there's no way. And they say, yeah, it's true. Because of Joseph's giving freely all the things that were taken from him, they are able to convince their father. And he says in verse 28, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. He actually stays with him for 17 years, which is the amount of time he had with him prior to him being taken away from him. And he is nourished and healed. So he has the same amount of time as in adulthood as he had in childhood with his son. Chapter 46 starts right away with Israel going out and offering sacrifices. This is what he does. He builds an altar and says, thank you. Thank you for all that you have given me. He again returns to that place where he can be close to God. And God speaks to him, and we have that classic answer, here am I. In fact, in verse 2, he calls him Jacob instead of Israel. And it's a reminder to him of, I know you. I know your heart. I have been with you since the beginning. I have been with you during this hard time. I was with you when you were Jacob, and I'm with you now that you're Israel. And he reminds him again in verse 3, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not and go down into Egypt, for I will make thee a great nation. The covenant is really important to them. And being in the covenant land, that promised land, was hard for him to want to leave, right? He's old. He knows what he's supposed to be doing. And the Lord is reaffirming to him, it'll be okay. I'll go with you. And maybe it's not what you thought, but I will go with you. In verse 4, I will go down with thee into Egypt. I will also surely bring thee up again. Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. And so he gets up, he takes all of his children, all of his things, and they go. The next bit of this chapter is a lot of genealogy saying, I'm taking everyone. Everybody is coming with us. In verse 22, they talk about the 5 changes of raiment. The number 5 in ancient Hebrew often connects grace or favor. Joseph is telling his brother, favor doesn't need to divide us anymore. It doesn't matter how much the youngest has. It doesn't matter how much you have. We don't need that anymore. We can rise above that and just bless and love each other. Toward the end of this chapter, Joseph knows that they're coming, and he readies his chariot and he races down them. And when he finds his dad, he weeps and falls on his neck. And he says he wept on his neck for a good while. He just has a good healing cry with his dad. And then in verse 30, he is content. Both of their hearts are content. Verse 31, and Joseph said unto his brethren and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh and say unto him, my brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. Here is a type and shadow of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ brings us to meet God. And when he does, he says, here's my brother. Here's my sister. Here's my family. Let me tell you all the really great and wonderful things about them. He doesn't come in and pronounce our weaknesses. Instead, he reminds us, I have covered your weaknesses. You are worthy to meet God and stand next to me, next to our Father in our throne room, in our glorious heaven together, and we can do this together. Don't worry about your weaknesses. We'll continue to build them. We'll continue to work together and walk this path because I can make the difference for you. I have made that difference. I have sacrificed myself, and I know the trials and the things you're going through, and I know that we can do it together. Joseph has warned them previously, hey, I'm going to introduce you, and don't tell him that you're a shepherd. So there's some distinction about the level of awesomeness of a shepherd at this time. And they are proud to be the Lord's shepherds. They are proud to be with the animals, and they are proud also to be the Lord's missionaries. And so when they actually introduce themselves, they introduce themselves as shepherds, lowlier than the low, and Pharaoh is fine with it. But it is a testimony of their willingness to be who they are and who the Lord needs them to be, which is the gatherer and the shepherd of the flocks. This brings up a great opportunity for us to reflect on ourselves. Are we the kind of hosts like Pharaoh who just loves them, and Joseph who love them and prepare for them and make things the very best that we can? Or are we a little more stringent with the things that we're willing to give? And just an opportunity for us to reflect upon our hearts and our willingness to give all that we have, stand up for the Lord, and be the people that God needs us to be. We see in verse 7 that Jacob, this is an unprecedented thing, right? We have a Hebrew who is blessing the Pharaoh, and it is a symbol of, this is your power, and I have the power of God. You could have that too. Let me bless you with that. And we are seeing in here who is the real leader. While we know that upon the earth, Pharaoh held that power, right? We also know that in God's eyes, we are all equal, and that the power that he wields and gives to his children is a longer lasting, more impactful power. And Pharaoh feels that at this point in time. After they all eat and are together, then it's time to set them up. And in verse 11, we see that Joseph and the Pharaoh give them the best of the land. They really, truly hold nothing back. We see this in other places too, that they don't care about the land. They're like, great, you have the best. I will go over here. The Lord will take care of me. It's going to be fine. And in verse 12, Joseph nourished them. This is him fulfilling that birthright. I will take care of you. I have the extra portion, and I can do that. Now, if we zoom out, it's not just his family that he is taking care of. He is blessing them so that they can bless others, which again is that promise from the Lord, right? That covenant that they made. You'll be blessed, and I need you to bless other people, and I need you to gather them in. And everyone needs that word of God. And so that is what they go forth and do. We see as the chapter goes on that everybody starts living their life again. Joseph begins to buy up the land for Pharaoh. People are hungry and starving, and they come and say, just have everything, have all that I have, because I don't have any food. And if I don't have any food, the land does me no good. And so they sell everything to Joseph, and he buys it all for Pharaoh. And in verse 23, Joseph said unto the people, behold, I have bought you this day and your land for the Pharaoh, and here is seed for you that ye shall go sow the land. 24, and it shall come to pass with the increase ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh. He is teaching them, and it's a type and shadow of Jesus Christ. We are bought with a price. We know that Jesus Christ offered his life for us, and we are bought with that price. And he does the same thing that Joseph had said here, is offers us goodness in return and says, here's what you need to grow. And when you have increase, bless others with it. Also that law of tithing of you will be greatly blessed. Give a little bit back. It's not going to hurt you to give a little back to where it came from. In fact, it will bless you. And that little shepherding moment where he teaches them to sow and to share, we see that in our life today as well. The end of this chapter is Israel calling his family together and letting him know, hey, I am getting old and I'm going to die. And what I want from you is to take me back, take my bones and bury me not in Egypt. Take me back to the promised land. Take me back where I belong. I will, in verse 30, but I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt and bury me with their burying place. In other words, if you love me, let me go home. Let me be with my people and bury me there so that I can show God that our family follows our covenant path. Chapter 48 is blessings for the boys from Father Jacob. And this one is probably out of chronological order. We know that they would have been in their 20s. The Ephraim and Manasseh would have been in their 20s. And yet there's a verse in here when it says that they came between his knees and he places their hands on their head. And so it sounds like they are smaller, they're littler. So it's possible that this is out of chronological order and just stuck in here at the end because now they're talking about his father dying, like a memory. He says to them in verse 3, and Jacob said unto Joseph, God Almighty appeared unto me and blessed me in the land that we were in. And he says in 4, and said unto me, behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and I will make of thee a multitude of people, and I will give this land to thy seed after thee for an everlasting possession. Again, a reminder, I know you're getting old, but you do have a promise from me. We have a covenant, and it's the Abrahamic covenant, that prosperity, that posterity, and that priesthood, and inviting everybody into this. And so he invites them now to live it with him. In verse 5, he says, bring in your 2 sons. And the Joseph Smith translation gives us a little more information about this, that they're actually rising above their uncles. They're becoming sons. And this is just tribal status. They're getting a double portion because Joseph has those 2 sons, and their chief job is going to be to care for all. And so he reminds them that you're going to be chosen. And so your job is to go and choose everyone. And here's that verse in verse 8. He teases them a little bit, kind of that childlike teasing. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons and said, who art these? And that is like a joyous teasing, like a grandparent coming in and saying, who are you? You can't be my grandson. You're too tall, or, that kind of a thing. And then he says that he will bless them. It says in 10 that the eyes of Israel were dim for age, and that he could not see. And he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And in verse 12, that's where he says that he brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself to the face of the earth. Now, Joseph is helping prepare them for the blessing. And so he sets them with Ephraim on the right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh on the left toward Israel's right hand, so that they are blessed in birth order. Well, Jacob moves them. It says he guided his hands wittingly before Manasseh was the firstborn. And that bothers his son a little bit, so he tries to correct it. And in verse 19, he says, and his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He shall also become a people, and he shall be great. But truly this younger brother shall be the greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. There's no mistake here. I know what the Lord wants. And Ephraim will be the one to fulfill that responsibility. So he's passing down this Abrahamic covenant, and he reminds them in 21 that even though he's going to die, God shall be with you and bring you again into the land of your fathers. He's reminding them, don't forget who you are. You have a double blessing here. You have this extra portion. Your responsibility then is to care for all the others. Chapter 49 is a lot about looking forward to this greater deliverance that is going to come. Again, that blessing of knowing Jesus Christ and the deliverance that he is going to offer them. Jacob is going to call everybody together and bless them, similar to a patriarchal blessing. And we see that in Deuteronomy 23 as well. And even though it's not called that here, this is that idea of here's the blessing that you're going to need from God, from me, to know who you are and what you should do. So he says, gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. So Reuben is blessed first, and he tells Reuben kind of a harsh reality of be aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. He says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellence of dignity and the excellence of power. It's like, you should have been so much more. And then he tells him plain out, you are unstable water in verse 4, thou shalt not excel because thou wentest up to thy father's bed and defiledst it. This sounds really harsh, but in reality, what he's saying is, listen, this is what you did. It is not who you are. And while you gave up that birthright, you still have worth. And you have a choice of who you want to become and whose you will be. And it's actually a reminder of this is possible to overcome. You are not forgotten. You are not without. You can still be everything you should have been from the beginning. And he moves on to Simeon and Levi, and he is telling them, he tells Levi and Simeon that they're really not great together, but they're wonderful individually. So maybe they should consider that as they move forward. Their weaknesses are their anger and their need for vengeance, but that doesn't mean that they can't overcome that. He moves to Judah and says that Judah means praise. He calls him Judah is a lion's whelp in verse 9, and we know that Jesus comes from this line, and he is known as the Lion of Judah. So here's a type and shadow of Jesus Christ, because that Shiloh, that word Shiloh, means whose right it really is. And we know that that right is Jesus Christ. He is the shepherd. He is the gatherer. He's the one that binds us. He is the foal of the vine. He is going to have that triumphant entrance. He goes to the winepress alone. The foal of the vine is in verse 11, and we know that that is Jesus Christ. The blood that they talk about of the grapes, we know that that is also Jesus Christ, because he enters that winepress alone. Unnatural to us is a reminder, and something they would have understand, to remind them that you have a great authority coming, and we have to prepare the way for Jesus Christ so that he can fulfill all the goodness that he has. Issachar in verse 14 is blessed with a spiritual gift. And if you are of one of these other tribes, Zebulun, or some of these that are not talked about quite as much, we have a blessing here in the scriptures that we can study not just them, but their fathers and their grandfathers. And we reap the same blessings that they reaped from them. So it's not a one stop here. We can travel backwards and learn more about their ancestors to learn the blessings that we can receive in our life from being of these different tribes. Dan, we know that he is going to be military strength, the idea of a judge and deferring judgment. Gad in 19, he's also military. He is going to have ups and downs, and he's being told, just keep trying. It's going to be okay. Asher is reminded to be very generous of what he has. And Naphtali is to bring in the fun. He reminds them all in verse 22 that Joseph is a fruitful bow. So in other words, we're going to start a new land. You have the opportunity to start again. So bring those strengths with you, bring those weaknesses with you, and make the choices to be stronger and better, because that is the chance that you are being given here. So in verse 26, he reminds them, listen, your responsibility is to bless and to share with all. And then in 28, he reminds them, don't compare. And don't be upset one with another. We are family, and our bond is stronger than that. And we have the opportunity to bless everyone. And we are so very blessed. Pay attention to that instead of being upset with one another. It's sweet in this chapter that he is dim-eyed. And then at the end, he talks about Leah, and he tells them that she has been buried with Abraham and Isaac and Rebekah. He is a kind and tender-eyed man like Leah, and it's just a sweet little moment. She's not forgotten. In fact, she is loved and treasured and gathered where she should be with her people. And we end this with him giving up the ghost and being gathered with his people. After Jacob dies, Joseph is overcome with emotions, and he fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And he has everybody get him embalmed because he plans to take him back to his father's land. In verse 8, the Egyptians come to Canaan to send their regards and their well wishes, and that is something at the time that would have been unheard of. But these people, their job is to gather people and to bring hope. And them coming to Canaan is a testament that they have done what the Lord has asked him to do, that they have lived within that covenant. We see in verse 13, for his sons carried him into the land of Canaan and buried him in that cave where he wanted to be buried. He really, truly was brought back to their father. And this is Joseph again, fulfilling his father's will, both his heavenly father and his earthly father's will. A lot of the rest of this chapter is the brothers being concerned that Joseph, without their father, will now hate them. And they are very concerned about this and wonder how they're going to survive without their father there to make the peace. And Joseph says, forgive yourself. You clearly are not forgiving yourself. We should move past this. And he says to them, the end of 30, Joseph wept when they told him that they hadn't forgiven themselves and they are worried about him not forgiving them. Essentially, he's like, do you not know who I am? Have I not taught you through my actions and through our experiences together, the life that I know and the Lord that I know and the love that I have for you? He says in verse 19, fear not, for I am in the place of God. In verse 20, but as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass it as it is in this day, to save much people alive. 21, now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. He is telling them, y'all, I am where I need to be. I have no anger. I have no hurt. I have no malice. I've been blessed tenfold. I don't need you to be sad for me. I have forgiven you. And Emily Bell Freeman talks about this but God moment, that I can't handle this, but God can. And in those moments, when there's no way for it to work, we need to remember that God can make it work. And that's what Joseph is telling his brothers is, you're right. If God weren't in this, we couldn't do this. I couldn't do this. But because he is here, we can do this because of God. Join me in learning this and living our lives this way. In fact, he tells them quite literally, I see God in this, and I want you to see God in this, and I want you to save this experience in your heart. Store it up for those hard times when you feel left, when you feel abandoned, that you know that God is with you and that God is in it. And in our personal lives, we watched them store for 7 years of lean times. In our lives, maybe it's harder to store up the spiritual things for the times that it feels very lean, that it feels like heaven is so far away. These experiences, we need to write them down. We need to share them with others, and we need to revisit them in our hearts and in our minds that we can have that strength as well. Elder Holland said something along the lines of, it may cost you everything, but all will be well. And that is what we need to remember here, is that maybe we're going to live through some hard times where it feels like nothing is left. We have lost everything. But God will make everything well. In verse 24, Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land into the land which he sware to Abraham and Isaac and to Jacob. And Joseph took the oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and he shall carry up my bones from hence. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him and put him in a coffin in Egypt. Joseph lives in the future, in that hope of Jesus Christ, in a hope of a resurrection. He belonged in the covenant land, and so he goes back because he wants to fulfill that covenant, reminding himself and all of us and his brothers that exile is not permanent, that Jesus Christ is the way back to that happy life. Joseph's life is proof that the pit is not the end, that prison is not the verdict, that hardship does not mean that promises are forgotten, and that mercy is stronger than betrayal. In the Joseph Smith translation, we know that he goes to the grave with joy. He is promising that his posterity will gather and that there'll be this seer and a choice seer. And he is being told that this is not the end. There's so much more coming. And we know that this is Joseph Smith. And it is interesting to note here that Joseph Smith would have been translating this and would have been so excited about this new seer. And at what point does he realize who that is? And at what point in our lives do we realize who we are and the beautiful things that we are being invited in to do in our lives? Remember, we are blessed with the ability to love and to gather in. And I hope that you have taken time with us today to truly dig into Joseph's heart. I have 2 pages of notes from his life and how he forgave, truly. He spent his whole life blessing others, and when we are focused on blessing others, we are not looking to the past. I had an experience this week that I'd like to share with you. My uncle's house burned down and he lost everything. And while we were there helping him clear out some of the rubble and save the few things that we could reach, my husband saw on his dresser a Christmas tree that his mother had had, and just showing him that picture had made him so happy. And my husband said, if there was a way for him to put me on a forklift and like push me in, I could reach that. Okay, the house is still on fire. It's been on fire for a week. The firefighters have come pretty much every day and needed to put out more fire. Because I've been studying forgiveness all week, I had this thought, this is Lot's wife, right? Her heart is still in that house. We're trying to pull out the things that we can get to, when in reality, we should walk away. It's not safe for my husband to be in that house. It's not even safe if he's on a forklift. And his response was, well, it would be safer than just trying to walk through the house, which, by the way, you couldn't walk through. And I thought, but is it really? We know that that house is going to crumble at any moment, and you're going to put yourself in there because of what? And I'm not judging my husband. I'm not judging anybody who tries to go back and save things. I think that is part of who we are. But in this moment, when we're talking about forgiveness, do I need to live in that fire? Do I need to turn back? Or can I keep my hands out of the fire and stay in the moment? Those things are gone. Whether it is the hard things that somebody did, or the good things that I had to leave behind, or the blessings that I didn't understand, the blessings that I did not get, can I turn away from them and not go back into the fire? Live for the now and live for the future because of the hope that Jesus Christ brings. And that is my hope for all of us this week, that as we're thinking about how do we forgive somebody who has hurt us, how do we forgive ourselves for something that we have done, is we don't need to go back in the fire. We don't want to look back like Lot's wife did. We truly need to live in the now. And we can remember those things and we can think about the joy that they gave us. But having that broken Christmas tree would not have brought him true joy, especially if my husband got killed or hurt trying to go in and get it. It is the now that we live in, the hope in Jesus Christ, and the ability to bless others through the gifts that we do have, that will bring us that lasting joy and allow us to forgive and truly give of that hurt so we don't have to feel that anymore. And I know as you do that, as you search the scripture, as you look for those types and shadows of Jesus Christ, and as you implement this into your life, these practices that Joseph did of loving others more than himself, of choosing to be happy in the prison, of trying to help others be happy, and of serving them, that you will come to know your Savior, Jesus Christ. And that will bring you the fulfillment that your hurt could not. And that is my testimony and my hope for you this week. I'm super excited to start Exodus with you next week, and I hope that you have a glorious week. Thanks for being here.